We're good to go.
Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Rhodes?
Here.
Chairman Lyons?
Here.
Let the record show that Mrs. Jones and Mr. Murphy and are absent with notice. Mr. Kent called and he will arrive at 9 o'clock today, so.
Okay. Before we proceed, any ex parte discussions?
No.
The minutes, any comments?
No, I move the minutes be approved as presented.
Second. Second.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
Yes.
Chairman Lyons?
Yes. Any additions, withdrawals, deferrals, arrangements, or agenda items? Reader?
Have none?
As it stands, we will have an October meeting.
Yes. We'll have other items even if we don't have any applications.
Okay, so let's go then to the meeting dates. Do the dates of November 20 and 18 work for people? Sure.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think we'll proceed with those dates then, Rita.
Very good.
Okay, why don't we go to the application for the 3140 Polo LLC.
Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen.
One,
Could we need to swear people in that want to speak.
sorry for proceeding too quickly.
Those who want to speak at this public hearing, please raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Good morning. My name is Richard Jones with Richard Jones Architecture. I'm happy to be here with the landscape architect for this project, Dave Bonker, 3140 Polo Drive. I believe Mr. Downey is en route, Seaside Builders. I believe you are all familiar with his work and his project, Harborview Estates, which we're happy to say all 6 homes are under construction, and 5 of the 6 are sold. So it's been a very successful project. Mr. Downey has purchased 3140 Polo Drive. A rendering of the proposed structure is up on the screen. We also have a color landscape plan here to highlight the layout of the house on the lot. And I believe this application goes along with 2 special exemption requests, and we can discuss those as well. If we go through the PowerPoint, we take a look at the location for the property. And you'll have to forgive me because I have a screen over here I can look at. This lot, 3140 Polo Drive, is about midpoint between Middle Road and Palm Way. It's a very modest size lot, but it's also in a great location because it has due westerly views down the canal and to the Intracoastal unobstructed. So it actually affords a great view from inside the home and from the exterior. I apologize if this site plan is a little light, but I can also defer you to review the hard copy we have over here. It's a very, again, modest lot and modest home size. There's increased setbacks on the sides and also some substantial offsets of the house to the front, and providing for a very large backyard area set back off the Intracoastal and the pool deck. Here are the calculations. The Gulfstream Bermuda style designated the setbacks. The one setback we're asking a special exemption for is the rear. I believe the code allows you to go to 30 feet with a special exemption, and I believe we're at 37 feet, or 37 feet 2. I have to confirm that, but it is on the plan. but it meets all the other criteria. The other special exemption is for some additional covered loggia area. So again, when you look at the size of this lot and the size of this house, very compatible with the surrounding homes on the street. Obviously much more modest than the Harbor View lots and houses on those lots. And so we proceed forward with the floor plan. Again, you have those in front of you, but it's a great room plan with master down, 2-car garage. There is a courtyard in the front that you will see when we get back to the rendering. And the pointer doesn't quite work on the screen.
No, it won't work.
It won't work. So we have the second floor, which is substantially less square footage than the ground floor. It's a very efficient home. Not a lot of wasted hallways and corridors, and quite a bit of setback to the second floor on the rear and the sides. And we have our elevations from the rear, front again with the proposed parapet and the entry courtyard. The rear takes on a more symmetrical look, and then of course the rendering, which shows the white on white color palette, the navy blue shutters and railings, the true wood veneer front garage doors and front door, bring a lot of warmth. And then the signature feature, the parapet, to the side of the entry, but also echoed in the wing walls that project off the house. Again, a very pleasing massing and stepping back of the facades on all sides. And again, the intent is compatibility with the surrounding community. We feel it fits in very well, and we're happy to answer any questions. I can ask Dave Vodker to give you a presentation on the landscape, and we can go from there. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
In the front of the house, I am proposing 2 foxtail palms here and here. So when you enter off the driveway, walk down the sidewalk, and these 2 foxtail palms will be flanking the walkway there. As you proceed towards the house, also proposing 2 Alexander palms to the left side as you walk towards the front door, and a triple Alexander palm to the right-hand side as you walk up to the front door. As Rich said, there's a courtyard type of area in the front, and so there'll be a railing there, and proposing white mandevillo vine on that railing, and the whole courtyard area will be surrounded by different ground covers. Along the north and south property lines, there's an existing ficus hedge, and it's about 6 foot high right now, so we'd like to keep that in place. As you proceed from the east to the west, there's 2 magnolia trees in the front yard, both on the north and south sides of the house, so it frames the house. In addition, there's a silver buttonwood tree in the middle of those 2 magnolias here and here, and they too are underplanted with shrubs and ground cover. There's a Japanese fern tree here and here, so it's symmetrical as you go back. And on the sides of the house, there are sable palm trees on either side with ligustrum trees planted between them. And so that's to give you coverage from a 12-foot height and then higher with the sable palms. And I'll show you in the elevations in just a minute. As you get to the backyard, there are fishtail palms here and here to give you additional privacy. And then the backyard is framed by coconut palms, 2 on this side and 1 on the north side. And these are leaning to, again, frame that view. One other thing, on the south side, there's a great existing avocado tree here, so that will be left in place. It's about 25 foot high right now. It's a great producer of avocados, actually.
Dave, I believe we designed each house around the tree.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure. Again, the north elevation, this represents the ficus hedge that exists there, and you can see the sable palms. We increase the height along with the house, or the elevation of the house, to screen it from adjacent property to the south. So there's sable palms here, and you can see the roof line in the background, I believe. And this represents the avocado tree here. The two magnolia trees are here. You can see the foxtail palms in the background. And then the coconut palms in the backyard with the fishtail palms adjacent to the existing hedge. On the north elevation, again, we have the sable palms with the ligustrum trees, with the existing ficus hedge. Again, the fishtail palms, the coconut palms, magnolia trees in the front yard.
Dave, mine, it calls that the south elevation.
It's incorrectly labeled.
Oh, that, okay. So the one that's right is really north,
That's right.
they're flipped.
Yes.
Then can I stop you and ask you a question there?
Sure.
If I were your neighbor then on the north, that doesn't look like enough coverage with the 5 sable palms sticking up there. I think the other elevation with the large, would you say, avocado tree looks okay, but
Yes.
I think that could be rather thin looking on the bottom, particularly before those heads grow out. Is there any way to get better protection from for the neighbor on the north? It looks like a ficus hedge and then 5 palm trees sticking up.
Yeah, but you probably can't see, Tom, is that we have these ligustrum trees between the sable palms.
Uh-huh.
So just as it's...
They'll grow up to it?
They will. I mean, we're starting those off at 12 foot high, which is about the maximum we can get from a nursery.
It's pretty high.
We like them because they won't outgrow the space and grow up underneath or into the canopies of the sable palms. So as those grow and get 14 or 16 foot high at their maximum maturity, I think it'll give you long-term blockage. And ligustrum are a very dense tree, if you're not familiar with them. Let's see, the east elevation, again, you can see the foxtail palms flanking the front door. You can see the triple Alexander palm to the right of it. And the magnolia trees and the silver buttonwood trees on either side. You can also see accent plants flanking the windows and the doorways, and those are either bridal bouquet, pleomelies, or topiaries. So we use those on the blank wall portions of the house to accentuate the doors and windows. And then the west elevation or rear elevation, you can see the leaning coconut palms kind of frame the house. The sable palms in the background, the existing ficus hedge on either side, and the fishtail palms on either side. And again, the accent plants flanking the windows and doors. Any other questions?
There's a ficus tree, I believe, which is west of the avocado. But I'm not sure it's on that property or the property to the south.
You're right. Right at the seawall, there is a big ficus tree, and it overhangs this property, but it's not on this property.
Okay, so, but that tree's gonna stay then?
Yes,
Right,
we don't have
it's
control
not
of
on your
that. So,
property.
yeah. There was also a huge mango tree back there that was a mess.
That's enormous.
Yeah, it is.
It's a beautiful tree, actually.
It's beautiful.
Rita, have you heard back from the neighbor to the south or north?
Yes, well, neither of those. However, we did have an email, just came a day or so ago, from Mr. Walton, who's across the street, and I'd like to read it for all of you. My name is James M. Walton, and I live at 520 Banyan Road. Our driveway faces the driveway of property under review. We have no objection to the project, but hope the construction vehicles can be parked on Polo. When service vehicles are parked across the street from our driveway, I must go over and ask them to move so I can get out of my driveway. Could this be a condition for the permit? Thank you and the committee for their understanding. James Walton.
Is that possible? Can we do that? Or we?
Yeah, we can make a condition of approval.
Yeah, I just want to see where.
Now, you can make
Where's the
that
street?
into your motion, as a part of your motion.
I don't think Mr. Ladani would have an objection to that. Just trying to see where that street
Yeah, what,
is.
That's what I'll be interested in.
It's on the,
That was,
I don't know how that affects.
Rita, what street was that?
Bang.
Banyan.
Dang,
That
it's
should
way up
be,
north.
Yeah,
that should be the next application.
Oh, it's the
I
next
think.
application.
You know what? Yeah.
No, no,
he's
that's,
got-
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
this is down by.
Banyon's further north.
Yeah, because Mr. Walton lives up by the other applicant.
That was fax 3500.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So no comments from the
So you-
neighbors
No.
with this.
but you can remember that for the next one.
And Mr. Ladani wouldn't care, would he?
I think
Well
you might have
said.
a slight objection to that.
Yeah, that's a long walk.
Any further discussion from the public, any discussion?
Yeah, just a question on the special exception number one. It's being reduced to 37.2 feet from what, 40 or 50?
50.
From
The
50?
standard setback is 50.
And it,
Oh, you mentioned 30, I think it's.
30, it's 37 feet, 2 inches, I believe.
From a 50.
From 50,
Gotcha.
yes.
Is that correct?
The spatial exception is allowed, in that particular area to go as.
Low as 30.
30,
Yes, okay, thank you.
and,
In this case, we
was-
have 7 more.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that was actually, done, that spatial exception was added to the code some years ago, but basically because at the time the subdivision was created, that's when the 50-foot was created. And most of the houses that were built prior to that were at 30. So to try to line them up, rather than have too much zigzag, they put that option in there.
That's helpful, thank you. Someone want to make a motion?
Well, actually, I have a question. With these 2 special exceptions, I guess staff recommends both have been met, and then we have a letter here in addition, right?
That letter was dealing with more or less some of the architectural elements.
Okay.
Rather than this specific special exception. The staff does believe that all standards have been met for both the 37 feet 2 inch setback and the additional 99 square foot for covered area FAR.
Curtis? Anything else from you?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Tom?
no, I'm just making read, no. Then I'll make a motion to recommend approval of a demolition permit. We need to do each of these one at a time.
Yes, we do.
No second?
Second.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche? Chairman Lyons?
Yes.
Further, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of a land clearing permit.
Second.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche? Mr. Lyons? Chairman Lyons, pardon me.
Yes.
Continuing to approve a special exception to permit the reduction of the rear waterfront setback to 37 feet 2 inches under section 70-75 J1.
I second.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
Yes.
Chairman Lyons?
Yes.
Continuing, recommend we approve a special exception to 99 square feet of covered unenclosed area that exceeds the maximum floor area ratio under section 70-72B2.
Before we proceed on
Yeah.
that, I apologize, I probably should have raised this earlier. Mr. Minor's letter, as it relates to that particular aspect, he notes that there's a commitment that the loge area will not be enclosed in the future.
That's correct.
What is the form of commitment?
Oh, I need to add it to the motion. So I'd continue the motion to state that it either be deed restricted or otherwise restricted such that that covered square footage area that was a special exception could never be enclosed.
That's correct, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would second that.
Rich? Yes.
Can I interrupt that motion?
Sure. Tom, you need to be sworn in. I don't think you were here on time.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Excuse me, sorry to interrupt the motion. Just a point of clarification. If there's a restriction on the enclosure based on the fact that we're at or near the maximum square footage of the property, I would request that it not be, I'm opposed to it being a deed restriction. If there's a restriction on the permit, that's one thing, but if it's a perpetual deed restriction, if in fact someone that buys this property from me 10 years from now comes in and they want to enclose it, they might be able to go before you and get a favorable recommendation at that point in time. Now you've got a deed encumbrance on the property. I don't think you need to do it through a deed. Matter of fact, I see that there are people in here today requesting waivers to add additional square footage to property that's under construction on the same street. So I don't think it should be that prohibited, personally.
Well, Bill, I think Bill's looking, but I think we've been that prohibitive before because otherwise people could put all sorts of covered space on the property, Tom, and then 5 years later, you know, make it a 6,000 square foot house instead of a 4,500 square foot house. I think that's the concern.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that I think you have a vehicle administratively to accomplish requests to make changes. They can't go ahead and do anything without a permit anyway. So they have to come before this board and before the commission, and then go to the city of Delray to get a permit to expand that space. So that's the point where you would stop them. As I mentioned, there's requests coming in today, I think, for a piece of property that maybe Mark's involved with down the street, add 1,000 square feet of additional space to the property. You know, people come in, things change, people's lives change, houses get sold, and at that point in time, if someone petitioned and came before Mr. Thrasher, whoever at that point in time, well, you'd probably still be here 10 years from now, Bill.
You can be sure of that.
But,
Absolutely, assured of that.
but, you know, and then they're gonna have to come before this board anyway. I'm not being difficult, I'm just.
No, let's see what it says.
I'm
You know,
adverse to
the
deed
other instance that you're referring to, Tom, the FAR is under the allowable amount. So he's not asking for an exception on those enclosures, but this exceeds the current FAR for the property to begin with, and if they then subsequently enclose that whole beautiful lanai there, I understand you want them to be able to come back to a board in the future and make that request, but Bill, do you remember, we've had this happen
We
before.
have, and one of the standards for approval is, and I'll cite the section, it's 7072, parens B, which is roof projections, and then it cites specific standards for review or approval under parens 2, and number E reads, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy or certificate of completion, the owner of the property shall prepare and record a deed restriction which at a minimum shall provide that all roof projection areas required to remain unenclosed as per approval of this special exception shall remain so long as the structure is in existence or exceeds the maximum permissible FAR. So it's a standard that they must meet, and if they don't, then the special exception would not be allowed. That's how,
Can I speak for one moment, Tom?
and
Excuse me. I believe the part that cannot be enclosed is the 99 square feet. And
Right.
so if you look at the entirety of the roof overhangs and the front entry and the balcony and everything that's considered the open air, I believe there's enough of that makes up 99 square feet,
and we are
where
talking.
the rear lanai could be enclosed and
Mhm.
still 99 square feet would still remain open and deed restricted.
The subject of the 99 square foot is correct.
That's correct.
So I
So
think,
they'd have to bring that back, they'd have to identify it.
right, and we'd have to
So-
identify where the 99 square feet is
Yeah.
that remains open, which I feel
I think
there is enough of it.
that's yet to be
Mhm.
determined, but your application indicates, I believe, that you have 330 square feet that is unenclosed under roof.
So
Right.
1/3 of it.
They could have gone a little higher, but they chose 99. So that, somewhere within any revised plan, 99 square foot must remain unenclosed.
Right, and I believe we would have that even if the lanai was eventually enclosed. So I think the terminology that, Tom, that they want to do as far as the deed restriction on the 99 square feet, as long as it's clear that it's just on 99 square feet, I believe that it will still allow a homeowner in the future to enclose the lanai. In my opinion, looking at the plan and the calculation.
As I say, that's yet to be determined. I mean, that's not part of this application. This application is asking for 99 square foot. That 99 square foot must have a deed restriction.
Right, as long as the deed restriction that you're mentioning is for just 99 square feet of open roofed area, then it'll be fine.
But you are of the opinion that the whole lanai could be closed someday?
Well, I'd like to take a look at my plan because I want to look at my lanai square footage versus the company entry.
Can you read this? It's pretty small.
I really don't know that discussion is appropriate at this time because the special exception reads to
Just
permit
to cover
99
that,
Just
square
want
foot
to
of
just
cover.
give the
Well,
developer
you
a
and Tom
comfortable.
should talk.
Yeah.
What did you just say, Bill? I'm sorry.
The special exception, you are asking for a special exception to permit 99 square foot of covered unenclosed area that exceeds the maximum floor area ratio. So we're talking about a deed restriction of 99 square foot. And that's all we're talking about,
And it
and
has to be-
other,
it has
what
to
you
be
might
done?
do, or some other owner might do, is not really part of this application.
Fair enough. I understand.
So the deed restriction is specifically only related to the 99
To
square
the
feet?
99 square feet.
All right.
But you should talk to be sure you're.
Is there enough other square footage, you
I
think?
believe 99 square feet deed restriction would be fine, would work fine.
And we still accomplish everything else we're talking about.
Do you know the square footage of the lanai?
The lanai is, when you look at the covered area on the ground floor, we're
Yeah.
showing 330 square feet. That includes the covered entry as well.
Yeah, I know that, but
And some additional roof overhang,
I
so,
thought we looked at the square footage.
what was it, 330? I believe the lanai is roughly about 250 square feet to the very outside edge. So if an
330
enclosure comes
minus-
down the center line of the columns, which is where you'd probably want an enclosure anyway,
Yeah.
you know, but again, that would come in the future. But I believe the 99 square feet would be a good way to word the restriction.
That's how it should be worded.
Who's the beneficiary of the deed restriction? Is it the town of Gulfstream, the entire town? Is it, I mean, how do you control that? And does it have to be done through a deed restriction? The only reason I ask this question is because I've dealt with deed restrictions in the past. It may seem insignificant to this board, and it may seem insignificant in terms of the total project scope. But, you know, when I go to sell these properties, and the attorney for the buyer comes in, you know how it goes, and then they say, well, what is this restriction? There's a cloud on this title, there's a deed restriction, it's perpetual in nature. What if we wanna go back? It means we can never do anything. We're gonna have to call up the town of Gulfstream, and they're gonna say that we can come in with, you know, all these things occur for 99 square feet. Can it be done administratively?
No,
No.
It can't be done.
absolutely not.
So that restriction cannot be done administratively, it has to be done? Have you done them that way before in the past?
Yes,
They're all that way.
They are?
Yeah.
Okay. But who's this deed restriction granted to? Is it granted to the entire town of Gulfstream? Is it granted to the board? I mean, who's?
No, it's
I don't
tied to
think
the
that there's a-
property.
Property.
It's tied to the property,
Yeah,
isn't it?
deed
So
restriction.
I'm not a lawyer, but I would
Runs
assume
with
it's.
the property.
So then has anyone ever come in and had to ask to get these deed restrictions removed?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
So they'd have to go through the process through this board and through the city
that's
commission?
correct.
Have they ever granted removals of the deed restrictions based on somebody,
I couldn't cite specifics, I believe that has happened. On whether it's special exception on square footage or some other deed restriction, it has been brought before, as long as all the other parts of the code are met.
Okay, all right. It's just that based on in this core zoning district, you're very restricted in terms of how much space you can put on these lots, so, you know, every square foot counts, that was my own comment.
Understood.
Thanks.
In returning to the original recommendation or motion, I think it's correct as stated, because under section 7072B2E, as Bill just stated, it covers that deed restriction would be applicable to the 99 square feet correct? Okay,
That's
so,
what we declared.
do you want me to restate the motion?
I would like you to.
Okay. I recommend approval of a special exception to 99 square feet of covered unenclosed area that exceeds the maximum floor area ratio, subject to section 7072, little b, number 2, little e.
Second.
Mr. Dougherty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
Yes.
Chairman Lyons?
Yes.
Finally, I'd recommend approval of a level 3 architectural site plan review to permit the construction of a 2-story, single-family Gulfstream Bermuda-style dwelling with attached 2-car garage consisting of 4,540 square feet and a swimming pool.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, before you vote on that, may I speak to the issue?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Before I speak to the issue, item number VIIA, is there going to be official action taken on that, or is that just accepted into the record? The Plaza Sole report, will you be voting on it?
Yeah, we're gonna be addressing it, but not now.
At the end of, yes.
Okay, I'd like to speak on that one as well. 3140 Polo Cove. The application calls for screening to be provided by existing plants as well as a plant list that will be incorporated into the new design. Includes carrotwood, avocado, Japanese tree fern, Alexander palm, foxtail palm, fishtail palm, Clusia gudifera, blueberry flax, Parson juniper, white mandevilla, plumeria, Asia jasmine, and Empire zoysia. I know your plans are really small, you probably couldn't read that, but those are all the plants that are on the plan. Beautiful plants. I got a lot of this at my house. I'm sure you have at yours. 1 year ago today, not today, but 1 year ago approximately, Mr. Marty Miner said under oath that if a plant is not in section 7150 of the code, it is not allowed in town. None of those plants I read are in 7150. Now, Mr. Thrasher testified to the same thing as well, under oath. Since that time, the commission has taken no action to direct Mr. Thrasher to rule any other way. So I would like to know, is a variance required to put these plants in, since it's already been on the record that these plants are prohibited from being included in the town planning list?
Mr. Thrasher, you can address what?
I will
the
try to.
facts.
Generally speaking, Mr. O'Hare has made this complaint on more than one occasion, if I remember correctly. We've addressed it in previous applications, and he's referring to a special magistrate hearing in which indeed that was the town's position. The special magistrate did not rule in favor of the town because of the language of the code, which speaks of other materials that could be used to locate or to use or identify materials that can be placed on property. That is language in our code, and consequently these materials, which are all non-native, are found in public present publications. Is that correct, Mr.? Yes. So therefore, there is no variance required. These materials are acceptable and allowed.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Just
Yeah.
as a clarification, so it's your position now that those plants will be allowed even if they're not in 7150?
I have answered your question. I don't care to repeat it.
Yeah,
It's
let's,
on the
if we
record.
could stay on this subject, please.
Sure,
Thank you.
sure. Regarding the deed restriction, I have no idea what that's all about, but it appears to me that the commission, the board, is attempting to tie the hands of any future boards by placing this deed into perpetuity. And it just seems to me clever guys like this, clever gentlemen like this board should come up with a way to give Mr. Ladani what he wants without putting something in that the title company's gonna charge him another $1,000 to try to rectify and convince an owner that it's not something that's gonna hurt them down the line. But that's all my comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Boyle?
Good
morning,
morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How are you?
Well.
I just have a few minor comments. First of all, Mr. Ladani,
I'm sorry.
you did a nice job.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bobo.
Well, you're welcome. Is this the area where that boat is I'm not familiar with this end of
What boat?
town. There was a boat, I don't know.
In the cove, no, this isn't on the cove, Marty, this
Oh.
is the end of the
South.
canal, this is the first canal south of the cove.
Okay, just curious. The other thing I wanted to mention that everybody else seemed to mention is the deed restriction. I have more experience with title work than I'd like to admit. The deed restriction, although I think this commission or board means well when they suggest the deed restriction, but I don't think they look back in their wake to see what the deed restriction really means. It's a bad idea. First question that I had, and I mentioned it to Tom. Tom?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure you're listening. Is who is the beneficiary of the deed restriction? I'm going to give a deed to you, Mr. Lyons, an easement restriction. And it says Martin O'Boyle to who?
Mr. Boyle, let me make it clear that I'm not a lawyer. I'm not studied in deeds. I think that if you feel very strongly, as this board periodically reviews the design manual, we certainly could look at that and study it with some competent advice and see if there's a better way. Now, who's the beneficiary? I'm not speaking legally. I think you understand that the reason it's being put in is for the benefit of the community to maintain the character. So we don't have too much square footage on small lots. So I guess it's a practical matter, would seem to me that the beneficiary is the community, the other people who live in this town.
Well, I can tell you, I've had experience right directly on point of what you just said. The most recent was in an area called Collingswood, New Jersey. The entire town was a beneficiary. I wanted to build a shopping center, and we had to get everyone in the town, everyone, to sign off. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful, but that's what we had to do. The town wanted it, most of the people wanted it, but there were a few sticklers who didn't want it. And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen here. In addition, if I were a buyer, and if I heard y'all right, I may not have heard you right, but if I heard y'all right, what you said was something that the deed restriction is going to be on the 99 feet or 98 feet.
99 square feet.
Right. Which 99? This one? That one? That one? That one? Which one?
It's not specific, and
Pardon?
it's not specific. I think
Well,
that's
you
what
have to. You have to have it specific.
Again,
You can't put a deed restriction on somebody's property and just have it be magic.
Mr. Royal, I appreciate your point, and again, it's, I think it'd be improper for this board without some legal counsel and further knowledge to start rethinking this language. I'm glad that we think it, but not today.
Yeah, and I think it's inappropriate for the board to perhaps not put that language in, but just as inappropriate to put the language in. And my suggestion for Mr. Ladani and for really the proper way of doing things is, why don't you rescind that portion? You could always reinstate it after Mr. Randolph is here, and he could explain to you, or his real estate man, Mr. Baird, he could come down and explain it to you. Or you can get an opinion from a real estate lawyer, but to straddle him with that restriction, and unfortunately, I don't really think, I think, again, you mean well, but I don't really think you understand the full thrust of what you're suggesting. It's not good, and it's not helpful, and all it's gonna do, somewhere along the line, it's gonna cause a lot of consternation, and no one wants that. So, please reconsider that, perhaps rescind it. You got plenty of time between now and the end of time. You can fix it. And you can have the expert here. Don't hurt the guy, that's what you're doing. Thank you. By the way, someone left their keys up here.
Oh, that's mine.
So should we table this?
Thank you again.
All right,
No, I think that, I think we should proceed.
We've been doing this for years with these
Right.
deed restrictions, we're not rescinding anything. I'd say we move on with the agenda.
Maybe just general comments. Not everybody in the town has to sign off on any changes that might be made in the future. This most likely would be something presented first to the ARPB and to the commission in the normal flow and review of things of that nature. The deed restriction of 99 square foot is anywhere that the owner, even today's owner or some other new owner, it could be located anywhere within the unenclosed square footage. And this body does not have any authority to rescind any such ordinance in our code.
can I just ask a question? If the architectural submission had been in FAR 99 square feet smaller, we wouldn't have to address it at all. So one choice would be, and I know you don't want to do that, the developer doesn't want to do that, but it's all coming up because the place, you're asking for 99 more square feet for the whole property, house, than fits on the property. Okay.
I just, what I'll have to do, in the absence of Attorney Randolph, is just have my attorney, Mark Grant, get in touch with him and make sure that the language is not prohibitive in such a way as to cause a title defect, prevent title insurance. It just needs to be clear. I mean, I understand it's 99 feet, and I understand what you're talking about. It just needs to be clear.
We would encourage that.
Richard, it's so small that we can't see it. It looks to me like the only square footage it could possibly be addressing would be on the lanai or the loges. There's no other
Well,
cover.
there's covered entry as well, square
You
footage.
wouldn't do away with the entry.
And again, when you're enclosing a lanai, you probably wouldn't enclose all the way to the outside edge. We have columns there, you'd probably straddle those columns or hold it to the inside edge.
Yeah.
And I believe that's gonna be close to the 231 square feet that you can enclose versus the 99 that you cannot.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Do we need to vote on it?
Yes, we do. Mr. Dockerty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Chairman Lyons?
Yes.
Now we need a motion for the level 3.
I made that motion. That was the last
That was the
motion.
last-
Oh, that was the last
Yes.
one? I thought it was a special exception.
We voted on that previously, I think.
Can you change this then?
Okay, I think, Rita, if you're ready, we'll move to the next application.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich? are you taking your time?
Yeah, I'll email you. My whole.
Oh,
Bill, I need some help here.
okay, I'll try. We'll do this every other month, so.
Get the stuff there.
It's yours.
Wow. You learn something new every day, right? Or don't?
Got that right.
Mark, this is gonna be too long.
N-A-R-S-H.
Oh, it's tiny. Yeah, no, it's tiny. And you notice it.
That's why I looked at the trees there, because they're very prominent, and without those trees,
He's on
that
church,
house
but
would be.
he's not here.
Was that Curtin B. True's house? The one.
The one that, oh,
Yeah.
it was an older guy.
Yeah.
He died.
Yeah, yeah.
You can, you can move up here. We only have 4
Okay.
here.
We know you're not Amanda Jones. Remove that. There's one up there. Mr. Kent.
Oh, he said
That was me.
Great to see you.
Yeah, Bill, I think it's what's
Here.
Apologize for the
on. We
technical.
have a new one? Okay.
Swap this out. Thank you.
Sure.
Just change this for the one you have. It's not.
Well,
No?
If
I'm
you're ready,
here.
are we ready to proceed?
No.
We have it in front of us, maybe.
Yeah, I got a presentation, that's what's going to change.
Mark, do you know how to turn on your TV?
Yeah.
The red button, there's a red
I
button.
can handle a clicker, I got people for this stuff.
I have grandkids. I have grandkids.
Pardon? Somebody younger than all of us.
What I'm gonna do is just keep it running here, so sort of hot subjects. You know, be sure that you
Is this
look at them.
the actual-
Don't spend all the time on it. Just acknowledge that we heard. Right?
Not working up there.
In most cases, you just read the first.
Sure.
What do you think?
Mhm.
That's good practice.
Hmm?
Right, I agree with you. Oh, good practice.
No. I don't know what happened.
Are you gonna be able to walk through it?
No, because I got all my colored renderings and everything.
Okay.
I didn't do a video, but I almost did.
Oh, wait, I'll put it back in.
By the way, I think most of us are familiar with the home, correct?
Yeah.
But do you know which house?
I know, yeah, I went by it this morning.
Yeah, I did too.
This is as far as we got, like, just in here.
Who's the architect?
The what? Read the architectural.
Hmm. All right, well, that's,
Good. The general ordinance.
Plans themselves?
all right, let me start anyway.
Yeah, Mark, I think, given the
Yeah, the trouble is
circumstances,
I got a ton of presentation material there.
you know, the house in particular we're all familiar with.
All right, while Bill's doing that, let me, okay, if I could. Good morning, Mark Marsh, Trees Marsh Architects for the record, representing Mr. and Mrs. J. Crompton, 3500 Polo Drive. As we discussed, everybody's familiar with the house. It's a French chateau design. The Cromptons bought it about 4 years ago, and we've been looking at it to see how we can modified to reflect their lifestyles. Unlike some of the comments previously, the 1,060 square feet that we're proposing complies with all the FAR or below the FAR, so there were some insinuations that we may be expanding more than we're allowed. So primarily the expansions are going to be on the east elevation. There are two wings that are coming out about 19 feet. And on the south side, there's an area between the garage and the kitchen that there is no utility room in the house. So they want to provide a new utility room. And we're going to be enclosing a little breezeway and making it into a breakfast area, which is currently on the roof. Also, along with this additional square footage, would be refenestrating the house. The windows currently are not impact rated. They do want to put in impact rated windows. And I'm sorry, I did forget one of the most important features is a new entry portico along the front. If you're familiar with the house, it's a very sheer entry to the house. It has no protection. So we've come up with a very, I think, pleasant and appropriate entry portico element. The house is going to stay the same color. The shed is going to be the dark green. Along with the fenestration, there is the proposal to attempt to, and I say attempt to roof the house in a more appropriate. You may or may not be aware that it's a cement asphalt, an asphalt shingle at the moment, which is not really allowed in town. We are hoping to use a Vermont slate tile, which again is much more appropriate for the style of the house. It's a massive roof. If the price just becomes prohibitive, we'll come back with an alternative in cement, which there are cement tiles that can mimic that. But the initial thing is to try to attempt to put in a slate roof, which again is much more appropriate.
Can the trusses handle?
Yes, it can.
Okay. Pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, the truss, it can handle, and that's a subject I don't want to get into, but I don't have to, but that's the only thing that the concrete tile may create a burden to that, for the slate being thinner. You're all familiar. Tom caught me at one of my sites on the other end of Poland. They were meant to have a slate tile on me, so I had to rummage in the garbage to get, but I think you're all familiar with it. It's a 1/4 inch thin. Paul knows it very well. He lives right across from it. So those are really the main ideas. If we can just turn this around, if we can't see it, I'd like to just show.
I apologize. We've had some technical problems.
Can we go back and I'll just show? Okay, this is.
Well, that's a good idea. We just look at it.
How do you move it forward? That's well, you just cut me off. All right. Okay, sorry, Rita, I'm going to come by. All right. It's just that I think you're all familiar with it. Sorry, that's good. Can you see it?
Yeah.
This is the existing house, and that's that sheer aspect of it. This is existing. What's the garage? This is just the rear. That's the area we're enclosing. The 2 areas, the 3 areas that we're enclosing are clearly indicated there. There's nothing on the second floor.
How deep is that front entrance going to be? 10 feet?
9 feet.
9 feet?
Do you have something you could portray the front entrance and what it's going to look like?
Yeah, and I'll show you. This is the black and white, but what I want to do, I'll show you.
There's 4 columns there.
Here are the renderings of it. So
Yeah.
that is that portico element. These are the two additional wings.
The entrance would be a severe improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there
Yeah, it is
standing in the
the
rain.
front entrance is severe.
Yes.
I've been there, it's raining, and
You
you're
can
standing
see the
there.
pitch of the roof. And this is what it
Nice.
looks
Oh,
like.
you wonderful.
So that's why I have a lot of money in this.
Yeah, no, I can tell you're proud of the work, I can tell.
So, and this is the wing. In terms of the landscaping, basically, as you're all familiar, it's very well shrouded. by
Yeah, the hedge.
hedges. There's a Ponciana tree that we want to save and relocate, and then the rest of it is just ground cover, plant material mimicking what's existing. So really the effect is on the banyan and the polo corners to this. So I apologize for this, but at least you've seen it.
That's your fault.
I want you to,
I was outside, but I did hear the concern about parking during construction. I guess that was this project. Obviously, we will address that. Fortunately, there's a fairly substantial motor court in front, and there's a ample service area, so I assume we will try to keep all the vehicles on the property.
Would it be a next summer project, timing?
Yes, I think so, or it may be early spring, depending on when we get, this is the first phase, so I will answer any questions that the board may have.
One comment I had with regard to Mr. Walton's letter, I mean, I appreciate his concern, particularly as you might
Live through it.
I've been living through it for an extended period of time. But solving Banyan's problem puts the problem on polo, so I'm not sure I'm really comfortable with shifting the problem to polo away from Banyan. So I guess my recommendation is, as you've offered, to make every attempt to limit the vehicles on Banyan or polo.
Right. And this is a little different than, I mean, it's a fairly modest addition. It's not something that's going to be dominating the whole property. So I think it can be done sequentially through and staged. So we will make every attempt to do that on behalf of the owners.
Are you gonna need to drive pilings for the two front?
Yes.
Are you really?
We may use, we've been using, helical piles, as they're called, screwed piles now, which we did interestingly on the house across from Falls, and it worked.
Who's going to be the contractor?
Right now, it's going to be Curtis Mead.
Would you be sure he gets the clear message on this?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the town has a parking plan that Bill.
Prior to a permit, we always require a traffic management plan, and we would include the comments that we have from.
Because Banyan is the one that has the terrible water issues with the
Yes.
boats that have their lawns
Yes.
right up to the road. And
Saturated.
they will be up in arms as they should be with the trucks. Yeah, right, yeah.
Okay.
All right, that's it. Should have mentioned that Hewlett has had some problems, or some parking. Well, I don't think you've had problems, hopefully.
Yeah, thank goodness I'm off the,
Right.
yeah.
By the way, Mark, I had a
Construction
question.
across
It is an asphalt shingle roof existing. That seems pretty rare. When did
It was
how old
done
is the house?
before the,
before the code.
before the code.
Yeah.
So,
The good news is you can't see the roof, really.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah,
Really?
it's,
I was just more of a
Yeah.
curiosity.
No,
I looked around, I don't think I've
we
seen
were
that.
running well to the original, so I
Okay,
can't
yeah.
really comment on that.
Yeah.
Now, this is just a question, you're not allowed to replace the asphalt shingle with asphalt shingle, are you?
I hope not.
Yeah, right.
That was the right answer.
And asphalt shingles is a lighter certainly than the concrete, but, right?
And
Yes,
it's
so that's why I was
lighter
asking the
than
trusses, because they might have.
I think it was an economic.
Okay, yeah.
It's a large roof. It's
Right.
a massive roof.
It was the Orthwines, the original?
Jim.
Jim
Yeah,
built it.
yeah, Jim, yeah, that's right.
Okay. Motion?
Any, did the neighbors
Oh, yeah.
opine?
Haven't heard from any of them on Mr. Wolf.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any comments from the public? I didn't see it back there.
No comments from public.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve a level 2 architectural site plan review to permit additions to the existing 2-story, single-family French chateau-style dwelling a total of 1,060 square feet. These additions requested are extensions to the northeast and southeast wings, a utility room on the side of the garage, a small breakfast area, and a new portico entry on the east elevation.
I'll second that.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mr. Kent?
I'll have to swear in first and say I had no ex parte communication.
All right, you don't have to get sworn in.
I don't, okay, good, and and then yes.
And Chairman Lyons?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Just as a point of interest, you're discussing some window, is that right, Marty? Unfortunately, I've got to run, but okay, I'm sure it's in good hands. Take care. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. So why don't we move the items by staff, report from Foster Solar.
Okay, you have been provided actually two documents, one dated 9/14 and one dated 9/16. Basically, they say the same thing, and they did as requested by this ARPB and the ad hoc committee, asked for input on the important items that actually affect Los Al Soleil. They've given us the straw ballot, and I don't know if you've read it or would like to have any of these reports read to the record, but we do have copies that we provided and copies for the public.
I don't think we need to read everybody's been provided these.
Yes.
Yes, I would agree.
Yes. Well, I'll make one general observation. I think the process has been excellent. We had the ad hoc committee who recommended that we have further discussion with Foster Soleil. The association for them sought out input and came back with some feedback and a recommendation. I think that's a good way of doing it. Any comments from?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the chance to speak on this. When the straw poll took place, I, as well as a lot of other members of the community, were sent the questionnaire. It was a pretty loaded question. There were a lot of emails exchanged back and forth where people were kind of irritated and wanted to have some kind of a meeting, maybe an ad hoc committee formed to come up with a consensus. The general feeling was that we weren't really taking into account what the people wanted there or the character of the neighborhood. One of the questions was regarding open front lawns. Under oath, Mr. Thrasher defined that as you could see the front door from the street. Evidence has been presented that of the 90 homes in Plaza Soleil, 30 of them you can't see the front door from the street, including ARPB board member, sorry, I can't remember his name, whose house is completely blocked from view. So the idea that the character of the community includes having your house, your front door visible from the street, well, 1/3 of the homes don't. The adoption of the HOA's recommendation, I think it's their recommendation that you continue to have this open front lawn zoning rule, which I don't think has been adequately defined and therefore vague and subject to all sorts of interpretation when an application comes down. I would suggest, or I would hope, that the board would ask the commission for clarification as to just what the heck open front lawn means. Now, I think it means when you're driving down the road, you have a broad vista of lawn. And that might be true on Avenue Au Soleil, the main drag, but it's certainly not true on the little side streets, like the house I just mentioned. It comes close to a constitutional taking of property. If you tell a homeowner, we want you to sacrifice the use and pleasure you might have in gardening in this area so that the rest of the town could benefit visually, aesthetically, that might require compensation. There's lots of examples of that. The Blue Ridge Highway is one example where the feds actually pay property owners to keep trees to make it look like the Blue Ridge is going through some sylvan wonderland, when actually on the other side there's farms and et cetera. So there is case law. I don't want to get into case law, but there are examples where if the government says, we want you to do this for aesthetic reasons, we're going to pay you. And we don't even want to go there. A lot of people would like, as the community matures and the homes are no longer stuck with builders' trees, but rather landscaping starts to populate, grows, it becomes more lush. The idea that we're going to take a moment in time and say, this is the way it's going to be for eternity, just seems unfair to the people who would really like to explore the landscape potentials of their property. So I would suggest you look more closely at that open front lawn issue. Thank you.
Let me address maybe two of your points. The latter on the open front lawn, I believe it's reasonably well defined. And maybe I'm confused as to the definition, but let me find it here. Bear with me, I do have it.
I apologize for stepping down. I didn't know it was going to be a question about.
Okay, definitions. Open front lawns, view vista shall be a minimum of 75% of the front line. So, you know what the front line is, right? And it's got to be 75% of it, 3/4, right? So that's clear to me. And the landscape cannot exceed a height of 3 feet. The landscape vista view plantings over 3 feet shall be no more than 25% of the front lawn. So I'm not, I think that's what it says. Is there any further definition that? So
It's very,
it's clear to me,
66.1.
but if it's not clear to you, how would you make it clearer?
Well, I apologize. I haven't read through the code for maybe 6 months. Is this a new regulation? Because I don't recall it.
Yeah, it is.
Has this been on the books?
You know, this is what we've been talking about.
Oh, what, your new landscape regulation?
Yeah, I don't know. Has this been circulated to, I don't know who?
Yes, it was circulated by Mr. Murphy, Malcolm Murphy. Made sure that they got a copy of the ad hoc report, the recommendations from the ad hoc, and after that distribution, they did a survey, and we have the survey results. Generally speaking, it seemed very clear to me, at least, that the residents in Plaza Soleil wanted to be treated equally or the same as the barrier island, and they didn't want a waiver from that concept at all.
Just as a point of clarification, the regulation you're talking about is still to be voted on by the commission, or this has already been enacted?
Okay, so that's a good question. We addressed a meeting ago, maybe 2 meetings ago, the ad hoc committee recommendations. There was one item that we chose not to vote on because we felt that it was important to get input from Plaza Soleil. And there was that process that you've heard about. And that process of seeking out feedback from the community, I should say community, the Plaza Soleil residents, had this exhibit which describes the definition, or provides the definition. And the result of that feedback and recommendation by your association was that we should proceed with this definition.
Maybe it would be helpful if I read it to you, and this is the proposed new definition of open front lawns. Would that be helpful?
Sure, sure.
Okay, and it's found it will be found if approved by the commission. All these changes have gone from ad hoc, or most of the changes from ad hoc to ARPB for their review, approval, or rejection. And then after that, their findings goes to the commission for final adoption. This body will not be adopting them, but will be recommending changes to the code. Language is recommended to be added to our definitions. Open front lawns herein referred to as view vista and applicable to front yards within the north, south, and Place au Soleil districts. A view vista is the measurement distance of the front property line. Open front lines, comma, view vista, comma, shall be a minimum of 75% of the front property line and without landscape planting exceeding mature height of 3 foot. The landscape vista view, comma, plantings over 3 foot shall be no more than 25% of the front property line.
Thank you. I apologize for the misunderstanding. I didn't realize there was a definition to be considered. So I guess the next step would be to talk to the commission about it, and if my neighbors are interested enough, they'll show up. If not, then they get what they pay for, so to speak. One last question to the board. Would you consider a property where the vegetation had continued to grow without any interruption by the property owner, and now it exceeded that, or maybe existing vegetation is already there, makes that property non-conforming? If it's in violation of the code because of a previous condition, it's now non-conforming?
If it were a condition of approval, or it was a condition of a permit.
So someone could come for a permit that didn't have landscaping included in it and be allowed to keep their non-conforming landscaping?
Unless they want to apply for work on their property that incorporates or touches or in part is a landscape review plan.
I see.
So I would think it's grandfathered unless you apply for a permit to change it in some way.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments if we go into this one section? I think we need to deal with the ad hoc committee recommendation as it relates to the section 7187, table of districts. We need to vote on that, correct?
What number? 70-187?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You voted on it, but you wanted to hold off and to
I don't know whether we voted, but
get
we need.
input from the.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so, yeah, we need to finalize if that indeed is what you're recommending to be approved.
I
And
didn't bring it with me.
would you,
I could read it, okay.
we probably need to read it.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Read it.
Which one is it?
It's this one, and does it include the definition too, I suppose?
Well, I did the definition,
Okay,
so
so-
we picked that one up,
Okay.
and you can vote on those.
Okay, so I'm making a
too,
motion
if you want.
on section
Okay.
70-187.
That's good.
Table of district standards, fences, Place au Soleil front. Provide language that would allow 6-foot open aluminum rail fences with a minimum 2-foot high base of landscape material planted in front, parentheses, road side of the rail fence, and shall be maintained a minimum 3-foot height. Such fencing would not extend beyond the applicable outer face of the structure. Note, there was a consensus among members to ask for input from the homeowners association, as there may be a majority of residents satisfied with the present code language.
Well, that will be part of the section, but what you
Okay.
just read
All right.
is, you really should, if you agree with it, as you made a motion, you need a second and a vote.
Somebody a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Dougherty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
Yes.
Mr. Kent?
Yes.
Chairman Lyons?
Yes.
And I guess a motion on the 66-1, just put it
I'll
down,
do.
as I read it.
I make a motion that as town manager read, 66.1
And a
be
second.
approved.
You had a second?
Mr. Dougherty?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
Yes.
Mr. Kent?
Yes.
Chairman Lyons?
Yes.
Rita, help me here, I believe there's still one matter we need to talk about, that Mr. Smith wanted to bring back for discussion on.
Yeah, I was so confused on that. It relates to the, we can,
Listed down on,
Oh,
item 8A, on the agenda.
Oh, yeah, it was, I think
Oh, okay.
we wanted this, maybe, it was pretty vague what other dark colored tiles would be. I thought we wanted to be more specific in what that would be. I think we were all specifically talking about shades of gray.
Yeah, so what originally was other dark color tiles to be added after the word slate
Slate
like.
like.
And you know.
And I had
it's
some
ambiguous.
concern about, well, I had some concern about how you describe it, or other dark colored tiles, because it could be red or blue or
Right.
green or whatever. I thought that we were trying to stick with, white through and through, or slate-like tile that was all gray, right? So I don't want to add the or other dark colored tiles, but we can do that if you want. But I said that if we were going to add that, I'd like to see samples of what those other dark colored tiles look like.
I think the ambition or goal on that was to provide further clarification, just, it actually adds to confusion. So I don't have a good solution, so my instinct is just leave it as slate-like. Because I just don't have any artful language to incorporate.
And Tom, your concern is it could be a dark red or dark green or
Yeah.
dark blue, is that?
Yeah,
I
not
missed
reading
that.
me wrong, we've seen some presentations that had some roofs that weren't slate-like or white, that were really quite attractive.
Right.
But I don't know how we define it unless we maybe address them each time. And there are some architects that have come to us, particularly with one of the big new homes that was built on the ocean, that wanted a roof that was other than white or slate-like. I think he wanted a green shade, right? Do you remember that?
Red.
Red, okay. Which we all thought was extremely attractive, but we weren't able to approve it because it wasn't within the code. So we need to decide, do we want to be able to approve those, or do we want to just leave it at white and gray slate-like? Isn't that what, that's what I was saying, I'm afraid about the, or other dark colored tiles. Well, good grief, that's not me.
I agree with you.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
Okay.
You don't have your code there either.
Where are we looking?
It would be, the color, the language of the code, which talks about basically generally Gulf Stream Bermuda style
That's
homes.
right.
The color of the roof, the language.
Well, it says roofs require white, flat, untextured tile except with gray slate or slate style tile may be permitted.
All right, let me,
Is that what you're referring to?
Seems like the,
I'm trying to remember some of the discussions at the ad hoc. The ad hoc seemed to want to put the burden upon the architect to present to the boards and the commission what they thought was architecturally pleasing. If there was a difference in what the code provides for and what they wanted to provide for. But let me read it. I'll try this here. It's under section 7238, and I'm going to stop till Rita can find it. 70-238 in the code. First of all, you agree I'm in the right section?
No.
Huh?
Yes.
Okay. Subparagraph A, required flat, comma, white through and through, comma, smooth, comma, uncoated tile, and gray slate-like tile may be permitted on homes that are predominantly Georgian or British colonial with Bermuda influences. Flat, gray through and through, uncoated tile, or slate-like tile may be permitted at the discretion of the Architectural Review and Planning Board and the Town Commission through the Level 3 review process, subject to the Architectural Review and Planning Board and the Town Commission making a determination that such alternatives are appropriate for the neighborhood. That's our current language. And the question is, do you want to change that to open up the options, open up further options for architects in regards to other colors? And although the code talks about level 2 and level 3, it doesn't talk about level 1, which is something I can approve, but I, by code, can bump something up to a level 2. So I personally think that current language and Rita, please disagree if you don't agree with me. I think that the current language is adequate, and it gives the option to others, to architects, to bring in something that they'd like to present in regards to the styling of the home.
So they have the opportunity,
Yeah.
the door's not closed, to present it to the Architecture Review Board. If we recommend approval, then it goes to the town commission.
Actually, I want to correct myself. I don't believe this code allows the introduction of other colors as it's written.
Right, we
Right,
would,
'cause
we
that's
would
what
only
Tom-
be able to approve white
Yeah.
or gray,
And so-
slate like, but the commission, of course, they could take it, you know, we could deny it, but they could take it to the commission could overrule, correct?
Yes.
Well,
not.
let me read it again.
Okay,
And we're talking about what goes to the ARPB and to the commission.
Right.
What are the options that are allowable by code to be taken to the ARPB for review and
Right.
approval? And it starts, flat, grade through and through, uncoated tile, or slate-like tile may be permitted at the discretion of the ARPB and the commission. It doesn't introduce any other options or colors. Do you agree with that first, Rita? And did I make myself clear? Basically, you have to deal with a gray color through and through of some type. I mean, there's all types of different categories of gray.
Bill, tell me, the ad hoc committee, based on their review, which, you know, it was a process of soliciting input from the town, talking to architects. It was a comprehensive process.
Yes.
They had recommended that there be some kind of discretion, or put differently, that the resident would have the opportunity to at least come to the Architecture Review Board and the town, and if we would, so that they had the option to bring it to us, is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but by code, again, you're still back into the same plot. Let's
Right.
take, for example, the red room. It's my interpretation of what took place, that on that particular home on the east side of A1A, this proposed red color for the roof would have been very, very pleasing and appropriate for that home and that design, that architectural design. But because of this specific language here that said the only option was gray that could be brought, it was considered to be a variance.
So I think the goal is to provide the flexibility
Yeah,
to allow for a discussion,
that's right. That, I believe, is what,
is recommended.
and you should, and I think you can do that in this section of the code with proper language. Trying to avoid, you know, the discuss, or the possibility of waivers. You know, the concept of waivers on certain things within this section of the code. If you could craft language in this roof section that accomplished the flexibility, I think that would be the place to do it, rather than to just let it be hit with a waiver system.
so I don't have any objection to it, it just is gonna put a lot more subjective conversations. This
True.
board is gonna face a lot more subjective issues on it than we currently do, so, but I don't wanna block it, I think we've discussed it enough. I mean, if I'm the one holding up the vote on it, I won't hold it up for that language, is what I'm saying.
Rita has a comment.
The ad hoc committee also felt that, when it comes to these other styles, such as Anglo-Caribbean, British West Indies, and Georgian, they believe that cedar shake roofs should be allowed on those styles, but definitely not on Bermuda. And I think this board, at the last meeting, you all agreed with that. But if you think that should be changed in discussion here today, then we need to make that note.
Actually, the ad hoc was pretty strong on that.
They were very
She had
strong.
concept.
I'm wanting
Yeah,
that.
Very much go like that,
Yeah.
they were strong.
But we've approved that, have we not?
Yes, you
Yeah.
have.
Okay.
But when you're reviewing roofs, period, I thought we needed to make it clear. Does that
Accept it.
include changing that or
Right.
go with it?
I think we'll go with it.
Okay. So you don't need to vote on those styles then?
So,
You've already done that.
right. Any other comments regarding providing some language which allow for the resident to present some option to the slate-like or to the white?
No, I'm fine with it.
I'm
We-
fine.
We'd ask them to bring it, and which we would do, they would know to bring it.
And now, I guess the challenge is, what is the motion? Do we have the language, or do we leave it
All right.
to?
Marty, do you have any comment that could help us here?
No, you're all, I
On
agree.
track?
You're on track.
I'm just talking off the top of my head, you basically could just say, slate-like tile, start there. Slate, regardless of the color connotation of gray, slate-like tile may be permitted at the discretion of the ARPB and Town Commission through level 3, subject to determination, and that puts the burden upon, in our review process and that pre-apps and so on, you can communicate that it's the architect's burden to prove that this type of roof is appropriate for the architectural style.
Because slate can come in a lot of different
Yeah,
colors
so you're
other
just,
than
you're saying
gray.
remove the word gray.
I'm saying, yeah, that's right, flat,
Except that-
eliminate gray through and through, uncoated tile or slate-like tile may be permitted.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, would it be better to be a little more thoughtful in the language and come back for the next meeting? Or are you satisfied with some language we have?
Well, if you're gonna give us that option, I would always like to have somebody wordsmith it a little better than
Yeah,
myself.
Yeah, well,
Could
we
you do
don't-
that, Marty?
Yeah, I can do
Is
that.
there
Sign
any
that
reason
tomorrow.
to speed it along? I don't
Yeah.
think so. We can wait another meeting. can
Yeah, we
not?
have more stuff yet we have to bring to you.
Okay.
We're not done.
Why don't we just bring roofs back again?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
Okay.
But we understand what the,
Yes, but we agree.
Can I,
Okay, that's your assignment, Marty.
Okay.
Chairman,
Give us something to work from.
may I make one comment? It's
Yes.
interesting that we always say slate light, but by just saying slate light, we sort of eliminate slate. I mean, that language, the way it reads, and I've read it so many times, is that it eliminates slate as an
You gotta have the
option.
fake stuff, you can't have the real stuff.
Well,
You can't have the real slate, no,
It
that's what I'm
says
saying,
gray
we just say,
slate or
No, it
slate
does.
style.
We just had-
one sentence before,
It says
flat,
gray.
white through and through, smooth, uncoated tile, and gray slate tile.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe
or
permitted.
slate
So-
style, so it- it-
Then you're opening up
Thank you.
beyond that for the concrete type roofs.
Perfect.
Thank you.
It covers it.
Okay, well, that's good. And I jumped out of order, I apologize, but I knew that Mr. Smith had it. So now we're going to go to what we consider,
B and
if you
C.
look at your agenda, we're looking at 7B,
Correct.
1 through 4. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Oh, no, please, you proceed. 1 through 4.
These are just what we consider to be housekeeping code changes, things that we need to do because they, for whatever reason, are not appropriate. And the first one is that we want to change basically our FEMA minimum finished floor elevation to adapt to the new flood maps. The new flood maps are using NAVD rather than NGBD. Do you know what those are? So all of our
Yes, go ahead.
all of our language in our code talks about, oh, you want him to explain it?
No, I'm familiar with it.
The proposed flood maps are coming out, and it's the 1988 new datum concept at 6 feet NAVD. In our present code, we have 7.0 NGBD. It's just the baseline document or baseline, like a benchmark that they want us to measure from. This is really nothing that we're going to change. FEMA is changing that language, so we are recommending that we, in regards to that flood zone, that throughout our entire code, where applicable, that the language be converted to NAVD. And that's something we can just vote upon.
One quick question. This issue is a big issue in the village of Southampton.
Yeah,
It's on the ocean.
yes,
Somebody's building a new house. FEMA said that you have to have it 6 feet off
yeah,
the ground. Well, all of a sudden you got 6 feet plus what was originally gonna be the height of the house. The house is 6 feet high.
yeah.
And so the village has frozen any new construction until they decide how they wanna deal with that. Is from the ground all the way to the top, is that gonna change the ultimate height because of this?
That's very complicated. The answer to it is yes. And I'll try to explain that answer best that I can. NAVD